In the unforgiving skies above Afghanistan, where split-second decisions mean the difference between life and death, one A-10 Thunderbolt II pilot carried more than just her call sign. Her aircraft's tail number told a story that would make even the most seasoned F-16 pilots fall silent with respect. This is the true account of Captain Sarah Phoenix Mitchell, whose A-10 Warthog became a legend in military aviation history, and the day when a routine stand-down order revealed the extraordinary truth behind her service record. Some aircraft are just machines. Others become symbols of courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable spirit of those who fly them. This is the story of both the pilot and the plane that redefined what it means to answer the call of duty when everything is on the line. The morning sun cast long shadows across Bagram Airfield as Captain Sarah Mitchell performed her pre-flight inspection of the A-10 Thunderbolt II that had become more than just her aircraft. It had become her identity. The weathered gray paint bore scars from countless missions over the mountains of Afghanistan, each mark telling a story of close calls and successful ground support operations that had saved lives below. Sarah ran her hand along the fuselage, feeling the familiar dents and patches that maintenance crews had carefully repaired after each mission. Her call sign Phoenix was painted just below the cockpit, but it was the tail number that held the real significance. The numbers 810965 seemed ordinary enough to most observers, but, to those who knew military aviation history, they represented something extraordinary. The radio crackled to life in her headset as she completed the walk-around inspection. "Phoenix, this is tower control. You have priority clearance for takeoff when ready." Sarah climbed into the cockpit, settling into the seat that had become as familiar as her own living room. The A-10 was not the fastest or most glamorous aircraft in the Air Force inventory, but it was reliable, tough, and purpose-built for the kind of close air support missions that made the difference between soldiers coming home or not. She had logged over 800 combat hours in various A-10s throughout her career, but this particular aircraft had been her mount for the last 18 months. As she ran through the startup checklist, Sarah thought about the mission ahead. Intelligence reports indicated Taliban forces were massing near a remote forward operating base in Helmand province. Ground forces had requested close air support for what appeared to be a significant enemy buildup. It was the kind of mission the A-10 was designed for, and Sarah had executed dozens of similar operations with surgical precision. The twin General Electric TF-34 engines spooled up with their characteristic whine, and Sarah felt the familiar vibration through the airframe. She had always loved this moment, the transition from static machine to living, breathing instrument of warfare. The A-10 might not be beautiful in the conventional sense, but, to Sarah, it was perfect for its intended purpose. "Tower, Phoenix ready for departure," she transmitted, advancing the throttles and feeling the aircraft begin to roll forward. "Phoenix, cleared for takeoff runway 27. Wind is light and variable. Contact departure control on 124.5 after airborne." The acceleration was gradual but steady as the heavily loaded A-10 gained speed down the runway. Sarah felt the familiar lift as the aircraft broke free from the earth, climbing steadily into the crisp morning air. Afghanistan spread out below her, a landscape of brown mountains and valleys that had become as familiar as her hometown in Ohio. 20 minutes into the flight, as Sarah navigated through the mountain passes toward her target area, an unexpected transmission came through her radio. "Phoenix, this is Viper Lead. We have 2 F-16s in your area. Request you stand down and return to base immediately." Sarah frowned inside her helmet. This was highly unusual. F-16 Fighting Falcons and A-10 Warthogs typically operated in complementary roles, not competing ones. The F-16s were air-to-air fighters and precision strike aircraft, while the A-10 specialized in close air support and tank-busting missions. There was rarely any conflict between their operational requirements. "Viper Lead, Phoenix. Can you clarify the reason for stand-down?" "I have ground forces expecting close air support in 30 minutes. There was a pause before the response came. "Phoenix, this is Colonel Martinez, Viper Lead. We've been tasked with handling the situation in your target area. Return to base immediately. This is not a request." Sarah checked her instruments and confirmed her position. She was still 15 minutes out from the target area, flying through a narrow valley between two mountain ridges. The unusual nature of the order bothered her, but military discipline was absolute. She began to bank the aircraft into a gentle turn that would take her back toward Bagram. "Roger, Viper Lead. Phoenix returning to base." As she completed the turn, Sarah caught sight of 2 F-16s flying in formation above her. They were sleek and fast, representing the cutting edge of modern fighter technology. She had always respected F-16 pilots for their skill and training, but she wondered why they were being assigned to what was essentially a close air support mission. The flight back to Bagram gave Sarah time to think. In all her years of military service, she had rarely been ordered to stand down from a mission unless there was a significant change in the tactical situation or a safety concern. Neither seemed to apply in this case. The weather was clear, her aircraft was functioning perfectly, and the ground forces were still requesting support. As she approached the traffic pattern at Bagram, Sarah noticed increased radio chatter on the tower frequency. Several aircraft were requesting permission to land simultaneously, which was unusual for the normally well-coordinated airfield operations. She was given priority clearance to land immediately, which raised another red flag in her mind. After touchdown, Sarah was directed not to the normal flight line but to a secluded area of the airfield where several senior officers were waiting. As she shut down the engines and climbed out of the cockpit, she noticed that the group included not just her squadron commander but also the base commander and several officers she did not recognize. Colonel James Harrison, her squadron commander, approached as Sarah removed her helmet. "Captain Mitchell, we need to talk. There are some people here who have questions about your aircraft." Sarah looked confused. "Questions about my aircraft?" "Sir, 810965 has been cleared for all missions and is fully mission capable. Maintenance records are current and all inspections are up to date." One of the unfamiliar officers stepped forward. He was wearing the rank insignia of a brigadier general, which immediately commanded Sarah's attention. "Captain Mitchell, I'm General Robert Caldwell from Air Force Historical Research Agency. We need to discuss the history of your aircraft, specifically tail number 810965. Sarah's confusion deepened. The Air Force Historical Research Agency was not typically involved in day-to-day operational matters. Their primary mission was preserving and documenting military aviation history, not interfering with combat missions. "Sir, I'm not sure I understand. This aircraft has been assigned to me for 18 months. I've flown it on 67 combat missions with a perfect safety record. What historical significance could it possibly have?" General Caldwell exchanged glances with Colonel Harrison before responding. "Captain Mitchell, are you familiar with the service history of this particular aircraft before it was assigned to you?" Sarah shook her head. "No, sir. When aircraft are reassigned, we typically receive only the immediate maintenance history and operational status. Previous service records are not generally relevant to current operations." "In this case, they are extremely relevant," General Caldwell said. "This aircraft has a history that makes it somewhat unique in the Air Force inventory." When the F-16 pilots read your tail number over the radio, they immediately understood why this mission became much more significant than a routine close air support operation. Sarah looked at her aircraft, still cooling down from the flight. The gray paint and weathered appearance made it look like any other A-10 in the fleet. She had never given much thought to its previous service, assuming it had been through the normal cycle of assignments and deployments that characterized most military aircraft. "Sir, what makes this aircraft special?" Sarah asked. General Caldwell pulled out a file folder and opened it. "Captain Mitchell, A-10 tail number 810965 has a combat record that spans 3 decades and includes service in every major conflict involving the United States Air Force since it was delivered to the fleet in 1982. But, more importantly, it has been flown by pilots who have demonstrated extraordinary courage under fire, and it has been involved in some of the most significant rescue and combat operations in modern military history." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she began to understand that her aircraft was not just another A-10. "What kind of operations, sir?" "The kind that define military aviation legend," General Caldwell replied. "And, according to our records, your service with this aircraft has continued the tradition in ways that have not gone unnoticed at the highest levels of the Air Force." Colonel Harrison stepped forward. "Sarah, you're being recommended for the Distinguished Flying Cross based on your actions during the Khost Province incident last month. But, when they researched your aircraft assignment for the citation paperwork, they discovered the historical significance of 810965. Sarah remembered the Khost Province mission vividly. Taliban forces had overrun a forward operating base, and she had provided close air support for over 4 hours while ground forces evacuated wounded personnel. It had been a challenging mission, but she had considered it part of her normal duties as an A-10 pilot. "Sir, I was just doing my job during that mission. Any A-10 pilot would have done the same thing. General Caldwell smiled. Captain Mitchell, that's exactly what every pilot who has flown this aircraft has said. And that attitude is precisely why 810965 has become legendary among those who study military aviation history. As the officers continued their discussion, Sarah found herself looking at her aircraft with new eyes. The scars and patches she had noticed during her pre-flight inspection suddenly seemed more significant. Each mark represented not just her own missions but decades of service by pilots who had answered the call of duty in the most challenging circumstances. "Sir, what happens now?" Sarah asked. "Now, Captain Mitchell, you continue flying missions in 810965, but with the knowledge that you are part of a legacy that extends far beyond your individual service," General Caldwell said. "And the F-16 pilots who ordered you to stand down today did so out of respect for that legacy, not because of any operational concerns." Sarah nodded slowly, beginning to understand that her relationship with her aircraft had just become much more complex and meaningful. She had always taken pride in her service as an A-10 pilot, but now she realized that she was part of something larger than herself. As the officers concluded their discussion and began to walk away, Colonel Harrison remained behind. "Sarah, there's more to this story than what General Caldwell shared today. When you're ready, there are people who can tell you about the previous pilots who flew 810965 and the missions that made this aircraft legendary." Sarah looked once more at her A-10, seeing it now not just as a machine but as a repository of history and tradition. She realized that the weight of responsibility she carried as a pilot had just increased significantly, but she also felt a sense of pride that she had been chosen to continue the legacy of 810965. The morning sun was higher now, casting different shadows across the airfield. Sarah knew that when she climbed back into the cockpit of 810965 for her next mission, she would be carrying more than just weapons and fuel. She would be carrying the hopes, courage, and sacrifice of every pilot who had flown this aircraft before her. As she walked toward the squadron building for her debriefing, Sarah reflected on how quickly her understanding of her service had changed. This morning, she had been Captain Sarah Phoenix Mitchell, A-10 pilot. Now, she was the latest guardian of a legend, responsible not just for completing missions but for honoring the memory of those who had established the remarkable combat record of tail number 810965. 3 days after her conversation with General Caldwell, Sarah found herself in the squadron's heritage room, a small space decorated with photographs and memorabilia from decades of A-10 operations. Chief Master Sergeant Mike Rodriguez, the squadron's senior enlisted maintainer, had asked her to meet him there after duty hours. "Captain Mitchell," Chief Rodriguez said as Sarah entered the room, "General Caldwell asked me to share some things with you about 810965 that aren't in the official records." Sarah took a seat across from the veteran maintainer, who had over 25 years of experience working on A-10s. His weathered hands and graying temples spoke to decades of keeping the aging aircraft flying in some of the world's most challenging environments. "Chief, what can you tell me about my aircraft that I don't already know?" Chief Rodriguez pulled out a worn photo album and opened it to a page showing A-10s lined up on a desert runway. The aircraft in the photos bore the distinctive tan and brown desert camouflage scheme used during the Gulf War. "This is King Fahd Air Base, Saudi Arabia, January 1991, he said, pointing to one aircraft in particular. "That's 810965, during Operation Desert Storm. The pilot was Captain Lisa Hammer Thompson." Sarah studied the photograph. The aircraft looked much newer then, its desert camouflage paint scheme bright and unmarked by the combat damage she had grown accustomed to seeing. "Captain Thompson was part of the 354th Tactical Fighter Wing," Chief Rodriguez continued. "During Desert Storm, she flew 37 combat missions in 810965, more than any other pilot in the squadron. But it wasn't the number of missions that made her legendary. It was what happened on February 25, 1991. Chief Rodriguez turned the page to reveal a photograph of an A-10 with significant damage to its left wing and engine. Despite the visible battle damage, the aircraft appeared to be intact and flyable. "That's 810965 after Captain Thompson's most famous mission," Chief Rodriguez explained. "She was providing close air support for advancing coalition ground forces when Iraqi Republican Guard units launched a counterattack with T-72 tanks. Thompson's A-10 was hit by surface-to-air missiles, but she continued the attack." Sarah leaned forward, studying the damage in the photograph. The left wing showed clear signs of missile impact, with jagged holes and twisted metal. The fact that the aircraft had remained airborne was remarkable. She destroyed 6 Iraqi tanks that day while flying a heavily damaged aircraft, Chief Rodriguez continued. When she finally made it back to King Fahd, the maintenance crews counted over 40 holes in the airframe from missile fragments and small arms fire. But Thompson insisted the aircraft could be repaired and returned to service. Did they repair it? Sarah asked. They did, but it took 3 weeks and every spare part they had available, Chief Rodriguez replied. Thompson refused to fly any other aircraft during that time. She said A-10 had saved her life, and she wasn't going to abandon it just because it was wounded. Chief Rodriguez turned to another page showing Captain Thompson standing beside the repaired aircraft. Even in the photograph, Sarah could see the patches and replacement panels that marked where the most severe damage had been repaired. When A-10 returned to service, Thompson flew it on 8 more combat missions before the war ended. She always said that aircraft had a soul, and it was her responsibility to make sure that soul continued to serve the Air Force. Sarah found herself thinking about her own relationship with A-10. She had always treated the aircraft with respect and care, but she had never considered it in such personal terms. The idea that an aircraft could have a soul was not something typically discussed in technical training or standard operating procedures. What happened to Captain Thompson after the war? Sarah asked. Chief Rodriguez's expression grew somber. She was killed in a training accident in 1993, flying a different A-10. But, before she died, she specifically requested that A-10 be assigned only to pilots who understood what it meant to put mission accomplishment and the safety of ground forces ahead of personal safety. Sarah felt the weight of that responsibility settling on her shoulders. The idea that her aircraft had been specifically assigned to her based on some evaluation of her character and capabilities was both humbling and challenging. Chief, how do they make those decisions? I mean, how does the Air Force determine which pilots get assigned to aircraft like this? It's not official policy, Chief Rodriguez admitted. But there are people in the assignment system who keep track of aircraft with special histories. When a pilot demonstrates the same qualities that previous pilots showed, they sometimes make sure the right aircraft and the right pilot find each other. Chief Rodriguez turned to a new section of the album, showing photographs from the mid-1990s. The aircraft now bore standard Air Force gray paint instead of the desert camouflage scheme. After Captain Thompson's death, A-10 was assigned to Major John Bulldozer Martinez at Pope Air Force Base in North Carolina. Martinez flew it for 3 years, including deployments to Bosnia and Kosovo during the peacekeeping operations there. The photographs from this period showed the A-10 in various international settings, from snowy airfields in Bosnia to dusty bases in Albania. In each image, the aircraft maintained its distinctive appearance despite the different environments and paint schemes. Major Martinez continued the tradition of aggressive close air support missions, Chief Rodriguez explained. During the Kosovo conflict, he flew A-10 on missions that required flying at extremely low altitudes through mountainous terrain to provide support for NATO ground forces. Sarah studied a photograph showing Major Martinez standing beside the aircraft after what appeared to be a particularly challenging mission. The landing gear and lower fuselage were covered with mud, suggesting the aircraft had operated from an unprepared field. Martinez had a philosophy that the A-10 pilot's primary responsibility was to the soldiers on the ground, regardless of the personal risk involved, Chief Rodriguez said. He pushed A-10 to its limits, but he always brought it home. What happened to Major Martinez? Sarah asked. He retired from the Air Force in 1998 and became a commercial airline pilot. But he stayed in touch with the maintainers who worked on A-10 and he always asked about the aircraft when he visited airshows or military bases. Chief Rodriguez turned to a section of the album showing photographs from the early 2000s. The aircraft now showed signs of the extensive service it had provided, with more patches and repairs visible in the images. In 2001, A-10 was assigned to Captain David Reaper Johnson at Moody Air Force Base in Georgia. Johnson flew it during the initial phases of Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. The photographs from this period showed the aircraft in the stark, mountainous landscape of Afghanistan that Sarah knew so well. The terrain looked identical to what she saw during her own missions, suggesting that A-10 had been operating in the same areas for over a decade. Captain Johnson was known for his precision in close air support missions, Chief Rodriguez continued. He developed techniques for providing fire support in urban environments that minimized civilian casualties while maintaining effective suppression of enemy forces. Sarah was impressed by the continuity of excellence among the pilots who had flown her aircraft. Each seemed to have brought something unique to their service while maintaining the same commitment to mission accomplishment and ground force protection. During one mission in 2002, Johnson used A-10 to provide close air support for a special operations team that was surrounded by Taliban forces in the mountains near Kandahar, Chief Rodriguez explained. He flew continuous combat air patrols for over 6 hours, conducting multiple strafing runs and coordinated artillery strikes. Chief Rodriguez showed Sarah a photograph of Captain Johnson receiving the Distinguished Flying Cross for his actions during that mission. In the background of the photograph, A-10 was visible with fresh battle damage that had been sustained during the extended combat operation. Johnson always said that A-10 flew differently than other A-10s, Chief Rodriguez noted. He claimed it was more responsive to control inputs and seemed to anticipate what he needed during combat situations. Sarah found this observation particularly interesting because she had noticed similar characteristics in her own flying experience with the aircraft. She had always attributed it to familiarity and experience, but now she wondered if there was something more to the aircraft's responsiveness. "What happened to Captain Johnson?" Sarah asked. "He was promoted to major and assigned to the Pentagon in 2004. He went on to become a general officer and is currently serving as the commander of Air Combat Command. But he still asks about A-10 whenever he visits operational units." Chief Rodriguez closed the album and pulled out a single photograph that he handed to Sarah. It showed a formation of A-10s flying over snow-covered mountains, with one aircraft clearly displaying the tail number A-10. "This photograph was taken last year during a training mission in Alaska," Chief Rodriguez said. "But look closely at the formation." Sarah examined the photograph carefully and noticed that A-10 was flying in the lead position, with 3 other A-10s following in perfect formation behind it. Even when it's not the mission commander's aircraft, A-10 seems to end up leading formations, Chief Rodriguez observed. The other pilots say it just naturally falls into that position. Sarah handed the photograph back to Chief Rodriguez, feeling overwhelmed by the history and tradition associated with her aircraft. The stories of Captain Thompson, Major Martinez, and Captain Johnson painted a picture of exceptional service spanning multiple decades and conflicts. "Chief, why are you telling me all this?" Sarah asked. "Because General Caldwell asked me to make sure you understood that flying A-10 isn't just an assignment," Chief Rodriguez replied. "It's a responsibility to continue a tradition of excellence that has been maintained for over 30 years. Sarah nodded slowly, beginning to understand the full significance of her role as the current pilot of A-10. She realized that her own service would eventually become part of the story that future pilots would hear when they were assigned to the aircraft. "There's one more thing," Chief Rodriguez said, pulling out a small metal object from his pocket. "This is a piece of shrapnel that was removed from A-10 after Captain Thompson's mission in Desert Storm. Every pilot who has flown this aircraft carries a piece of it as a reminder of the courage and sacrifice that came before them." Sarah took the small piece of metal, feeling its weight in her palm. It was smooth from years of handling, polished by the touch of multiple pilots who had carried it into combat. "When your tour with A-10 ends, you'll pass this to the next pilot," Chief Rodriguez explained. "It's a tradition that connects all the pilots who have flown this aircraft." As Sarah left the heritage room that evening, she carried with her not just the piece of shrapnel but a new understanding of her role as a military pilot. She was no longer just responsible for completing missions and maintaining proficiency. She was now the guardian of a legacy that extended far beyond her individual service. 2 weeks after her meeting with Chief Rodriguez, Sarah was summoned to a classified briefing room at Bugram Airfield. The notification had come through encrypted channels, and the security classification was higher than anything she had previously encountered in her operational assignments. As she entered the windowless room, she found herself facing a panel of senior officers she did not recognize. "Captain Mitchell, please take a seat," said a colonel wearing the distinctive badge of Air Force Special Operations Command. "I'm Colonel Patricia Williams, and we need to discuss a mission that involves your aircraft and its unique capabilities." Sarah settled into the metal chair, noting that the room's walls were lined with maps of Afghanistan and Pakistan marked with symbols and notations she did not immediately understand. The security protocols and formal atmosphere suggested this was far more significant than a routine mission briefing. "Sir, what kind of mission requires this level of classification?" Sarah asked. Colonel Williams exchanged glances with the other officers before responding. "Captain Mitchell, have you ever heard of Operation Nighthawks?" Sarah shook her head. "No, sir. That's not a designation I'm familiar with." Nighthawks was a classified program conducted during the Kosovo conflict in 1999, Colonel Williams explained. It involved using specially modified A-10s for nighttime precision strikes against high-value targets in urban environments. The missions required exceptional pilot skill and aircraft that had proven reliable under the most challenging combat conditions. Colonel Williams activated a projector that displayed a grainy black and white photograph of an A-10 flying at low altitude over what appeared to be a city at night. The aircraft's tail number was clearly visible, 810965. "Your aircraft was one of only 3 A-10s selected for the Nighthawks program," Colonel Williams continued. The pilot during those missions was Major Elena Shadow Vasquez, who had been specifically chosen based on her night-flying capabilities and her experience with 810965. Sarah studied the photograph, trying to imagine flying close air support missions in complete darkness over populated areas. The precision required would be extraordinary, and the margin for error would be virtually non-existent. "What made those missions so challenging?" Sarah asked. The targets were Serbian command and control facilities located in urban areas, Colonel Williams replied. Standard bombing missions would have caused excessive civilian casualties, but ground forces needed those facilities neutralized to stop ethnic cleansing operations. Colonel Williams advanced to the next slide, showing a detailed map of Pristina, the capital of Kosovo. Red circles marked several locations throughout the city, each representing potential targets for the Nighthawks missions. Major Vasquez flew 7 Nighthawks missions in 810965 during a 2-week period in April 1999, Colonel Williams explained. Each mission required her to identify and engage specific buildings while avoiding civilian casualties and maintaining complete operational security. Sarah was beginning to understand why this briefing was classified. The missions described went far beyond standard close air support operations and entered the realm of special operations that were typically reserved for other aircraft types and specialized units. How did they accomplish target identification in urban environments at night? Sarah asked. That's where the special modifications to 810965 become important, Colonel Williams replied. The aircraft was equipped with advanced night vision systems and precision targeting equipment that had been developed specifically for the Nighthawks program. Colonel Williams showed Sarah a series of technical diagrams displaying modifications that had been made to the aircraft's cockpit and sensor systems. The changes were extensive and represented a significant upgrade from standard A-10 configurations. The modifications were designed to be removable so that the aircraft could return to standard configuration after the completion of Nighthawks missions, Colonel Williams noted. However, some of the wiring harnesses and structural reinforcements remained in place. Sarah realized that the enhanced responsiveness she had noticed in 810965 might be related to these permanent modifications. The aircraft's ability to handle precision maneuvers and maintain stability during aggressive combat operations could be a direct result of the Nighthawks upgrades. What happened during Major Vasquez's missions? Sarah asked. Colonel Williams activated a video display showing aerial footage from one of the Nighthawks missions. The black and white imagery showed an A-10 approaching a large building in what appeared to be a residential area. The aircraft's approach was incredibly precise, threading between other buildings with minimal clearance. This footage is from Major Vasquez's 4th Nighthawks mission, Colonel Williams explained. The target was a Serbian intelligence facility that was coordinating attacks against Albanian civilians. The building was located in a densely populated area with schools and hospitals nearby. Sarah watched as the aircraft in the video executed a perfect attack run, delivering ordnance with surgical precision before climbing rapidly and disappearing into the darkness. The resulting explosion was contained entirely within the target building, with no visible damage to adjacent structures. Major Vasquez's precision during Nighthawks missions became legendary within the special operations community, Colonel Williams continued. She never missed a target, and there were 0 civilian casualties during any of her 7 missions. Colonel Williams advanced to a photograph showing Major Vasquez standing beside 810965 after the completion of the Nighthawks program. Even in the formal military photograph, Sarah could see the intensity and focus that must have been required for such demanding missions. After Kosovo, Major Vasquez continued flying 810965 on conventional missions, but she always maintained that the aircraft had capabilities that extended far beyond standard A-10 operations, Colonel Williams noted. She believed the modifications and her experience with Nighthawks had created a unique platform for precision operations. Sarah was beginning to understand that her aircraft's history included not just conventional combat operations but also highly classified special operations that pushed the boundaries of what A-10s were considered capable of accomplishing.
What happened to Major Vasquez? Sarah asked.
She was promoted to lieutenant colonel and assigned to Air Force Special Operations Command Headquarters, Colonel Williams replied. She continued to advocate for the use of modified A-10s in special operations roles until her retirement in 2008. Colonel Williams turned off the projector and faced Sarah directly. Captain Mitchell, the reason we're sharing this information with you is that we have a situation that requires the same kind of precision capabilities that Major Vasquez demonstrated during Nighthawks. Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension as she realized this briefing was leading to an operational assignment rather than just historical education.
What kind of situation? Sarah asked.
Intelligence sources have identified a high-value target located in a compound near the Pakistan border, Colonel Williams explained. The target is a senior Taliban commander who has been coordinating attacks against coalition forces throughout eastern Afghanistan. Colonel Williams activated a different display showing satellite imagery of a remote compound consisting of several buildings surrounded by high walls. The compound appeared to be located in mountainous terrain with limited access routes. The challenge is that the compound is located adjacent to a Pakistani border village with a significant civilian population, Colonel Williams continued. Standard bombing missions would risk civilian casualties and potential diplomatic incidents with Pakistan. Sarah studied the satellite imagery, noting the proximity of the target compound to what appeared to be civilian dwellings. The precision required would indeed be similar to what Major Vasquez had faced during Nighthawks missions.
Are the Nighthawks modifications still available for 810965? Sarah asked.
The equipment has been maintained in storage for over a decade, Colonel Williams replied. Our maintenance teams can reinstall the systems within 72 hours, but we need a pilot who understands both the capabilities of 810965 and the precision requirements of special operations missions. Sarah realized she was being offered the opportunity to continue the legacy of 810965 in a way that connected directly to its classified operational history. The mission would require her to demonstrate the same level of skill and precision that Major Vasquez had shown during Nighthawks.
What would be the mission parameters? Sarah asked.
Single aircraft, nighttime insertion, precision engagement of the target compound while avoiding civilian casualties, Colonel Williams replied. The mission would require you to operate independently without ground control support, relying entirely on the aircraft's enhanced systems and your own judgment. Colonel Williams pulled out a classified folder and placed it on the table. This contains the complete mission briefing, target intelligence, and technical specifications for the Nighthawks modifications. If you accept this assignment, you'll have 1 week to familiarize yourself with the enhanced systems before mission execution. Sarah looked at the folder, knowing that opening it would commit her to accepting the most challenging mission of her career. The weight of 810965's history and the legacy of the pilots who had flown it before her suddenly felt very real and immediate. Captain Mitchell, we need to know your decision within the next 24 hours, Colonel Williams said. This mission cannot be delayed, and there are no alternative platforms or pilots available with the necessary qualifications.
Sarah nodded, understanding the significance of the moment.
She was being asked to carry forward the tradition of excellence and precision that had defined 810965's service record, but in a context that would test her abilities in ways she had never experienced.
Sir, can I ask why 810965 was specifically requested for this mission?
Colonel Williams smiled slightly.
Because Major Vasquez recommended it.
She's now a civilian consultant for Air Force Special Operations Command, and when this mission requirement came up, she specifically stated that 810965 was the only A-10 in the inventory with the modifications and operational history necessary to accomplish the mission successfully. As Sarah left the briefing room, she carried with her the classified folder and the knowledge that her next mission would either continue the legendary service record of 810965 or potentially end it. The stakes were higher than any mission she had previously flown, but she also felt a connection to the pilots who had faced similar challenges in the same aircraft. That night, as Sarah reviewed the mission briefing in her secured quarters, she found herself thinking about Major Vasquez and the Nighthawks missions. The level of precision and skill required was intimidating, but she also felt confidence in the aircraft that had proven itself capable of extraordinary performance under the most demanding conditions. The piece of shrapnel from Captain Thompson's Desert Storm mission sat on her desk as she studied the target intelligence and mission parameters. Sarah realized that within a week, she would either add another chapter to the remarkable history of 810965 or become the pilot who failed to maintain its tradition of mission accomplishment. The installation of the Nighthawk's modifications took exactly 68 hours, with maintenance crews working around the clock to restore 810965 to its special operations configuration. Sarah spent those 3 days in intensive training with the enhanced systems, learning to integrate the advanced night vision capabilities with her existing combat experience. Captain Mike Wizard Chen, a flight test pilot who had worked on the original Nighthawks program, served as her instructor during the abbreviated training period. His expertise with the modified systems proved invaluable as Sarah adapted to the aircraft's enhanced capabilities. The key difference with the Nighthawks configuration is situational awareness, Captain Chen explained as they completed Sarah's final training flight. The enhanced sensors give you information that standard A-10s can't provide, but you have to learn to trust what the systems are telling you. Sarah had found the transition challenging but manageable. The night vision systems provided unprecedented clarity in darkness, while the precision targeting equipment allowed for accuracy that exceeded anything she had experienced in standard A-10 operations. The aircraft feels different with the modifications, Sarah noted as they completed their approach to Bagram. It's more responsive, but also more sensitive to control inputs. That's exactly what Major Vasquez said during her training, Captain Chen replied. She always maintained that 810965 seemed to adapt to the enhanced systems better than the other aircraft in the Nighthawks program. After landing, Sarah spent the remainder of the day reviewing mission intelligence and rehearsing attack profiles in the flight simulator. The target compound's location presented multiple challenges, including mountainous terrain, proximity to civilian areas, and limited escape routes in case of emergency. The mission briefing that evening included representatives from multiple agencies, including CIA analysts who provided detailed intelligence about the target and his operational patterns. The high-value target was confirmed to be in the compound, along with several associates and an unknown number of civilian family members. The target typically moves to a specific building in the compound between 0200 and 0300 hours local time, explained the CIA analyst. This provides a window for precision engagement that minimizes risk to civilian casualties. Sarah studied the intelligence reports and satellite imagery, noting that the target building was separated from civilian quarters by approximately 50 meters. The precision required would push both her skills and the aircraft's capabilities to their limits. What happens if the target moves to a different building? Sarah asked. Mission abort, Colonel Williams replied firmly. Under no circumstances can we risk civilian casualties for this operation. If there's any doubt about target identification or civilian presence, you return to base. The mission was scheduled for the following night, giving Sarah one final day to prepare mentally and physically for what would be the most challenging flight of her career. She spent the morning in physical training, knowing that the extended flight time and stress of special operations would test her endurance. In the afternoon, Sarah performed a detailed inspection of 810965, paying special attention to the newly installed Nighthawks equipment. The modifications were seamlessly integrated with the aircraft's existing systems, creating a platform that looked familiar but possessed capabilities far beyond standard configuration. Chief Rodriguez joined her during the inspection, bringing with him the maintenance records for the Nighthawks modifications. Everything checked out perfectly during ground testing, he reported. The aircraft is ready for operations. Chief, have you worked on Nighthawks modifications before? Sarah asked. I was a staff sergeant during the original Kosovo missions, Chief Rodriguez replied. I worked on this same aircraft when Major Vasquez was flying Nighthawks. It's good to see 810965 back in special operations configuration. That evening, Sarah attended a final mission briefing with updated intelligence and weather forecasts. The conditions were optimal for the mission, with clear skies and minimal wind that would facilitate the precision approach required for target engagement. Radio silence will be maintained throughout the mission, Colonel Williams emphasized. You'll be operating independently from takeoff until landing. Ground control will monitor your progress but cannot provide assistance or guidance during target engagement. Sarah nodded, understanding that the mission's success would depend entirely on her ability to navigate, identify targets, and engage with precision using only the aircraft's enhanced systems and her own judgment. At 2,345 hours, Sarah began her pre-flight preparation in the squadron's life support shop, donning specialized equipment required for extended night operations. The gear included enhanced night vision goggles and communications equipment designed to interface with the modified systems in 810965. The walk to the aircraft was conducted in complete darkness to preserve Sarah's night vision adaptation. The flight line was eerily quiet, with only essential personnel present to support the classified mission. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility as she approached her aircraft, knowing that multiple agencies and senior military officials would be monitoring the mission's progress. The startup and taxi procedures were conducted with minimal lighting to maintain operational security. As Sarah advanced the throttles for takeoff, she felt the familiar surge of power from the twin engines, but she also noticed the subtle differences in the aircraft's behavior due to the Nighthawk's modifications. The climb to cruise altitude was smooth and uneventful, giving Sarah time to familiarize herself with the enhanced systems during actual flight operations. The night vision equipment provided remarkable clarity, transforming the dark landscape below into a detailed map of terrain features and structures. Navigation to the target area required careful attention to both GPS coordinates and visual landmarks to ensure precise positioning for the attack run. The mountainous terrain and proximity to international borders left no margin for error in navigation or target identification. As Sarah approached the target area, she activated the precision targeting systems and began the careful process of identifying the specific building containing the high-value target. The compound appeared exactly as depicted in satellite imagery, but the challenge was confirming which building currently housed the target. The enhanced sensors detected heat signatures from multiple buildings in the compound, indicating the presence of people throughout the facility. Sarah had to wait for movement patterns that would confirm the target's location according to the intelligence briefing. At 0247 hours, Sarah observed movement consistent with the target's known patterns. An individual moved from one building to the specified target structure, matching the timing and behavior described in the intelligence reports. Sarah began her attack approach, carefully positioning the aircraft for the precision engagement. The attack run required flying at extremely low altitude through narrow mountain valleys to approach the compound from the optimal angle. Sarah felt the aircraft respond precisely to her control inputs as she navigated the challenging terrain while maintaining focus on target identification. As she approached the final attack position, Sarah activated the weapons systems and prepared for ordnance release. The targeting systems confirmed lock-on to the specific building, and all indicators showed optimal conditions for precision engagement. Sarah released the ordnance with surgical precision, immediately beginning a steep climbing turn to clear the mountainous terrain surrounding the target area. The explosion below was contained entirely within the target building, with no visible secondary effects on adjacent structures. The egress from the target area was accomplished without incident, and Sarah maintained radio silence throughout the return flight to Bagram. The mission had been completed exactly according to plan, with precision engagement of the target and no civilian casualties. Upon landing at Bagram, Sarah was met by Colonel Williams and the mission evaluation team. The initial intelligence reports confirmed successful elimination of the high-value target with no collateral damage to civilian areas or personnel. "Outstanding work, Captain Mitchell," Colonel Williams said as Sarah climbed out of the cockpit. "The precision of your attack exceeded all expectations and maintained the operational security required for this type of mission." Sarah felt a mixture of relief and satisfaction as she realized she had successfully continued the tradition of excellence associated with 810965. The mission had required every skill she had developed as an A-10 pilot, enhanced by the aircraft's special capabilities and the training she had received. During the mission debrief, analysts confirmed that the intelligence objectives had been accomplished without any compromise to civilian safety or diplomatic relations with Pakistan. The precision of the attack and the minimal signature of the operation met all requirements for special operations missions. This mission demonstrates that the Nighthawk's concept remains viable for precision special operations, Colonel Williams noted during the debrief. "Your performance with 810965 proves that the combination of pilot skill and aircraft capabilities can accomplish missions that other platforms cannot." As the debrief concluded, Sarah realized that her successful completion of the Nighthawk's mission had added another chapter to the legendary service record of 810965. She had proven herself worthy of joining the elite group of pilots who had flown the aircraft in special operations roles. The following morning, Sarah found herself back in the squadron's heritage room, where Chief Rodriguez was updating the photo album with documentation from her Nighthawk's mission. A new photograph showed 810965 in its special operations configuration, with Sarah standing beside the aircraft after mission completion. "You've earned your place in the aircraft's history," Chief Rodriguez said as he placed the photograph in the album. Major Vasquez would be proud of how you handled the mission and maintained the tradition of precision and professionalism. Sarah looked at the new photograph alongside images of the previous pilots who had flown 810965 in special operations roles. She realized that her successful mission had not only accomplished intelligence objectives but had also validated the continuing relevance of the Nighthawks concept for future operations. 6 months after the successful Nighthawks mission, Sarah received notification that would change both her career and her relationship with 810965 forever. The message came through official channels from Air Force Personnel Center, informing her that she had been selected for promotion to major and assignment to the Air Force Test Pilot School at Edwards Air Force Base. The assignment represented the pinnacle of military aviation careers, offering opportunities to fly experimental aircraft and contribute to the development of future Air Force capabilities. For most pilots, such an assignment would be the fulfillment of a lifelong dream. For Sarah, it meant leaving behind the aircraft that had become central to her identity as a military aviator. Colonel Harrison called Sarah to his office to discuss the assignment and its implications for both her career and the ongoing operations of the squadron. The conversation would prove more significant than either of them initially realized. "Sarah, this assignment to Test Pilot School is recognition of your exceptional performance, particularly the Nighthawks mission," Colonel Harrison explained. "The Air Force invests in test pilot training only for officers who have demonstrated the highest levels of skill and judgment." Sarah felt honored by the recognition, but she also felt conflicted about leaving 810965 and the operational mission that had defined her service for the past 2 years. "Sir, what happens to 810965 when I leave for test pilot school?" Sarah asked. Colonel Harrison's expression grew serious. "That's actually a more complex question than you might expect. General Caldwell from the Air Force Historical Research Agency has been in contact about the aircraft's future assignment." Sarah sensed that there was more to this conversation than a routine discussion about aircraft reassignment. The involvement of the Historical Research Agency suggested that 810965's unique history was again influencing official decisions. According to General Caldwell, 810965 has reached a point in its service life where continuing operational assignments may not be appropriate, Colonel Harrison continued. "The aircraft has over 8,000 flight hours and has been in continuous combat operations for over 3 decades. Sarah felt a sinking feeling as she realized the implications of what Colonel Harrison was explaining. After decades of distinguished service, 810965 might be approaching retirement from active duty. "Is the aircraft being retired, sir?" "Not exactly," Colonel Harrison replied. "General Caldwell has proposed that 810965 be transferred to the Air Force Museum at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for permanent display as a representative example of A-10 combat service." Sarah was stunned by the news. The idea that her aircraft, which had performed flawlessly through countless missions and multiple conflicts, would become a static display seemed almost incomprehensible. "Sir, the aircraft is still fully mission capable. The maintenance records show it's in excellent condition despite its age and service history. That's exactly why General Caldwell believes it's the perfect candidate for museum display," Colonel Harrison explained. "Most aircraft that end up in museums have been retired due to mechanical issues or obsolescence. 810965 would be displayed as an example of what the A-10 was capable of accomplishing at its peak performance." Colonel Harrison pulled out a folder containing correspondence from the Air Force Museum and the Historical Research Agency. The documents outline plans for a comprehensive display that would include not just the aircraft but also documentation of its complete service history and the pilots who had flown it. The museum display would include information about Captain Thompson's Desert Storm missions, Major Martinez's Balkan operations, Captain Johnson's Afghanistan service, Major Vasquez's Nighthawks missions, and your recent special operations assignment, Colonel Harrison noted. Sarah realized that the museum display would preserve not just the aircraft but also the stories of courage and sacrifice that had defined its service record. Future generations of military aviators would be able to learn from the experiences of the pilots who had flown 810965 in combat. "When would this transfer take place?" Sarah asked. "The tentative timeline calls for your departure to test pilot school in 3 months, followed by preparation of 810965 for museum transfer approximately 6 months later," Colonel Harrison replied. "That would give us time to document the aircraft's current configuration and complete any final maintenance requirements." Sarah found herself facing a decision that would affect not just her own career but also the final chapter in the service life of an aircraft that had become legendary within the Air Force community.
"Sir, is there any possibility of extending the aircraft's operational service?"
Colonel Harrison considered the question carefully before responding. General Caldwell mentioned that there might be alternatives if a compelling case could be made for continued operational assignment. But it would require justification at very high levels within the Air Force. Sarah spent the next several days considering her options and researching precedents for extending the service life of historically significant aircraft. Her investigation revealed that while most military aircraft were retired based on mechanical condition or mission requirements, there were occasional exceptions made for aircraft with exceptional service records. Her research led her to contact Major Elena Vasquez, the retired pilot who had flown 810965 during the Nighthawks missions.
Major Vasquez, now working as a civilian consultant, agreed to meet with Sarah to discuss the aircraft's future.
"Captain Mitchell, I've been following your service with 810965 through my contacts at Special Operations Command," Major Vasquez said during their video conference. "Your Nighthawks mission was executed with the same precision and professionalism that has characterized the aircraft's entire service history." Sarah explained her concerns about the aircraft's planned retirement to museum display and her desire to find alternatives that would allow continued operational service.
"Major Vasquez, do you believe 810965 still has operational value beyond its historical significance?" "Absolutely," Major Vasquez replied without hesitation.
The Nighthawks modifications and the aircraft's proven reliability in special operations make it uniquely valuable for missions that require precision and stealth.
There are very few platforms in the Air Force inventory with similar capabilities. Major Vasquez's endorsement gave Sarah the foundation she needed to develop a proposal for extending 810965's operational service. She began working with Chief Rodriguez and other technical experts to document the aircraft's unique capabilities and potential future missions. The proposal they developed outlined several scenarios where 810965's special operations configuration would provide capabilities not available from other aircraft. These included precision strikes in urban environments, special forces support missions, and training for future Nighthawks operations. Sarah presented her proposal to Colonel Harrison, who agreed to forward it through appropriate channels to General Caldwell and other decision-makers involved in the aircraft's disposition. The proposal generated interest at multiple levels within the Air Force hierarchy. 2 weeks later, Sarah received notification to report to a meeting at Air Force Special Operations Command Headquarters at Hurlburt Field, Florida. The meeting would include General Caldwell, Major Vasquez, and senior officers from multiple commands with interests in special operations capabilities. During the meeting, Sarah presented her case for continued operational assignment of 810965, emphasizing its unique capabilities and proven performance in special operations roles. The presentation was well received, but the decision would ultimately depend on broader Air Force priorities and resource allocation. "Captain Mitchell, your proposal has merit, but we need to consider the long-term implications of maintaining specialized aircraft for limited mission sets," General Caldwell explained. The Air Force is facing budget constraints and aging aircraft fleets that require difficult decisions about resource allocation. Major Vasquez supported Sarah's proposal by emphasizing the strategic value of maintaining Nighthawks capabilities for future conflicts that might require precision operations in urban environments. The lessons learned from operations in Iraq and Afghanistan demonstrate that future conflicts will increasingly require precision strikes with minimal civilian casualties, Major Vasquez argued. Aircraft like 810965 provide capabilities that are not available from standard Air Force platforms. After extensive discussion, the panel reached a compromise decision that addressed both operational requirements and historical preservation objectives. 810965 would continue in operational service for an additional 5 years, during which time it would be used primarily for special operations training and limited high-priority missions. After the 5-year extension, the aircraft would be transferred to the Air Force Museum for permanent display, but with the understanding that it could be recalled to operational service in case of national emergency or special mission requirements. Sarah felt satisfaction that her efforts had succeeded in extending 810965's operational service while also ensuring its eventual preservation for future generations. The compromise decision recognized both the aircraft's continuing military value and its historical significance. As Sarah prepared for her departure to test pilot school, she worked with Chief Rodriguez to document the aircraft's current configuration and maintenance requirements for future pilots. They also updated the Heritage Room display to include information about her own service with 810965.
The day before her departure, Sarah performed one final flight in 810965, a routine training mission that allowed her to experience once more the aircraft's exceptional responsiveness and reliability. As she completed the landing and taxi to the flight line, she reflected on the privilege of having served as part of the aircraft's remarkable history. During the aircraft shutdown procedure, Sarah placed the piece of shrapnel from Captain Thompson's Desert Storm mission in the cockpit map case, where it would await the next pilot assigned to continue 810965's tradition of excellence. She had carried the talisman through her own missions, and now it was time to pass the responsibility to someone else. Chief Rodriguez met Sarah as she climbed out of the cockpit for the final time. "Captain Mitchell, it's been an honor working with you and watching you add to the legacy of this aircraft. The next pilot will have a tough act to follow." Sarah looked back at 810965, sitting quietly on the flight line with its engines cooling down from their final flight together. The aircraft looked no different than it had on her first day, but she knew that her service had added another chapter to its remarkable story. "Chief, make sure the next pilot understands what they're inheriting," Sarah said. "This aircraft deserves a pilot who appreciates its history and capabilities." As Sarah walked away from 810965 for the last time, she carried with her memories of missions that had tested her skills and character in ways she had never anticipated. The aircraft had been more than just a machine, it had been a partner in service that had made her a better pilot and a better officer. Years later, as a test pilot flying experimental aircraft at Edwards Air Force Base, Sarah would continue to follow 810965's service record through her contacts in the operational Air Force. The aircraft continued to perform special operations missions with the same reliability and precision that had characterized its entire career. When 810965 finally retired to the Air Force Museum after its extended service, Sarah attended the ceremony where it was formally transferred to permanent display. Standing before the aircraft in the museum hangar, surrounded by other legendary military aircraft, she reflected on the privilege of having been part of its story. The museum display included a comprehensive history of 810965's service, featuring photographs and documentation from each pilot who had flown it in combat. Sarah's own service was represented alongside that of Captain Thompson, Major Martinez, Captain Johnson, and Major Vasquez, creating a permanent record of courage and dedication that would inspire future generations of military aviators. As visitors to the museum read about 810965's service record, they would understand that some aircraft transcend their mechanical nature to become symbols of the values and traditions that define military service. The legend of tail number 810965 would continue to inspire long after its engines had fallen silent.